بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله ما بعد فإن أحسن الكلام كلام الله وخير الهدى هدى محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وإن شر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. In the last lesson, or in the last couple of lessons, we looked at the three main points of dispute between the Prophet ﷺ and the message that he brought, and between the mushriks of Quraysh. And these three main points were, number one, in no particular order, the al-Ba'ath, which is the resurrection after death, and likewise the Risala, the messengership or the prophethood. Was he really a prophet? Was he really a messenger? And thirdly, and the greatest issue, was the issue of Tawheed. And in each of these three areas, we looked how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He revealed upon Muhammad ﷺ responses to the shubuhat, to the doubts of the mushrikeen, the pagans, about the resurrection, about his prophethood, and of course about the tawheed of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And in these evidences, there was also reason. In the Quran there is reason. The reason why I mention this is because we believe, Ahlul Sunnah believe, that in the Quran is nur, the Quran is light, the Quran is huda, is guidance, the Quran is rushd, it is direction. The Quran contains everything. It even contains arguments of reason within the Quran. And so when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He establishes the ba'ath, the resurrection, and He establishes the messengership of Muhammad ﷺ, and when He establishes His tawheed and His oneness, His rububiyyah, His uluhiyyah, His asma wa sifat, in all of this there is also reason. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He directs to arguments of reason. The reason why we say this is because there are some people, some groups, some sects who are astray, misguided, and they do not believe as we believe. We believe that the Quran is the foundation of our knowledge about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is the starting point. There are some sects who believe, like the Jahmiyyah, Mu'tazila, Ash'ariyya, Maturidiyya, they believe that the intellect, the aql, the reason, is the starting point of knowledge about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So they make the reason to be the foundation, and they make the Quran, the revelation, to be the branch. And as a result of this, they went far astray. Far astray. They made a mistake in the issues of Tawheed. They made a mistake in how to prove the messenger is a messenger. And they made a mistake in how to prove the resurrection. How to prove that the resurrection is true. They abandoned the method of the Quran. They left the method of the Quran, and they went instead and relied upon pure reason. And as a result of this, they, because of the mistakes that they made, they allowed the enemies of Islam, who do not believe in the Tawheed of Allah, they do not believe in a creator, they do not believe in resurrection, they do not believe in prophethood, that the prophethood is real, is true. They just believe that there are men who come, they have strong imaginations, they are very clever with their words, and they make up things and they tell people things about things which are not true, so that people believe them and they can make people lead moral lives. This is how these philosophers, this is how they look at prophethood. A prophethood is just a liar. He's just good at telling lies. And so these people who we are speaking of, the Jahmiyyah, Mu'tazila, Ash'ariyya, Maturidiyya, they followed a method different to the method in the Quran. The Quran is the most powerful reason, is the most compelling argument. No one can repel the argument of the Quran. So these people, they left this, and instead they relied upon the tools, the instruments of the misguided non-Muslims themselves, using reason and speculation. And so what they ended up with was weak arguments. So they didn't really prove Allah's existence, nor did they prove the messenger's prophethood, nor did they prove resurrection. And so the reason why we mention this here is because as we are looking at the seerah, and we saw that the three main areas where the dispute took place, Tawheed, Risala, and Al-Ba'th, the resurrection, we saw how the Quran, just samples of verses, there are many, but how the Quran responded to the shubuhat of the mushrikeen. So this is what we looked at in the previous lesson, and we saw that the Quran came and gave the answers to the mushrikeen. They were silenced, they had no response. And so now we go past the stage of the mushrikeen using these types of arguments, jidal, just arguing and trying to counter the falsehood. Now, when they were unable to answer the Prophet ﷺ, they now decided to completely destroy the da'wah. So this is now the next stage, and this is where we begin today's lesson. So the mushrikun, they decided that they are going to completely drop the da'wah, to demolish the da'wah, and to stop the people entering into Islam by force. Because now speech, argumentation, mockery, making mockery of the Muslims, it didn't work. And these Muslims obviously are holding on to their belief in a much more stronger way than these mushrikeen thought that they could, change them and whatever. So they thought that this now requires some additional pressure, force, hardship and things like this. So what they began to do is that the chiefs of the tribes, they began to punish the Muslims. Any person who became a Muslim from the tribe, then the chief of that tribe began to punish each of those people. And a group of them, they went to Abu Talib, and they said, they wanted to basically tell Abu Talib, stop this nephew of yours from preaching this message, from calling to Allah. So this is something that we'll take inshallah ta'ala for the rest of this lesson. So, and from this we will learn the trials and the tribulations that the Muslims went through, the early Muslims, and how they were harmed in the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the path of Tawheed and Iman. So as for punishing the Muslims, then they brought things by which when a person hears them, it makes him shake, it makes him shiver, and the hearts are stirred and moved by way of these things. So by way of example, Bilal radiallahu anhu, he was a slave to Umayyah bin Khalaf, and Umayyah bin Khalaf used to take a rope and tie it around the neck of Bilal, and then he would drag him and take him in front of the children. So the children would play with him, meaning mock him and play with him. This is, humiliating a person. And Bilal would say, Ahad, Ahad. He would say, Allah is only one. Allah is only one. And they would also take him out at the time of Dhuhr, and they would put him on his back, on the earth or the stone which had been baked by the sun. And they would also bring stones which were very hot and place them on him, and likewise place a huge stone on his chest so that his back presses against the hot, the ground. And then he would say, he would continue saying, Ahad, Ahad, meaning Allah is only one. Allah is only one. And they would say to him, either you disbelieve in Muhammad and you worship Al-Lat and Al-Uzza, either you do this or we're going to leave you, we're going to leave you where you are. And he would continue saying Ahad, Ahad. So one time Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiyallahu anhu, he was walking past and he saw him being punished, and so he decided that he was going to purchase this slave. So he bought Bilal and then he freed him for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this shows the lofty status and the position of Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, and how he would use his wealth. How he would use his wealth to support and aid the Muslimin. Then there was another person by the name of Amir bin Fahira, and he would be punished up until he became unconscious. He would faint from the punishment, and he wouldn't know what he was saying. He was feeling so much pain that he was almost about to collapse. He didn't know what he was saying, and then he would say things which he didn't know what he was saying. Likewise, Abu Fakiha, Aflah is his name. They would take him out from his house in the middle of the day and in the intense heat. And then they would put on his feet, they would put shackles made of iron on his feet, and then they would take his clothing off, they would take his thawb, and likewise they would put him on the baked ground, the ground. If you've been to Umrah and you go to the Haram, and you can see that most of the marble is white, but some of the marble is actually black. And if you happen to go and stand with your socks off, with your slippers off, and you go and stand on the black marble, you have to jump like this because it is so hot. And so in a similar way, they would take the Muslims out into the desert and into the black rock on the ground, and this would conduct the most heat. And they would put them onto this rock, and then they would put on the chest a large rock so they couldn't move. And then this would lead them to losing consciousness. They would faint as a result of the pain from the heat. And so this individual, Abu Fakiha, they used to punish him in this way, and until eventually, at a later stage, he was given permission to make hijrah to Abyssinia. Many of the Muslims, they made hijrah to Abyssinia on 2 occasions, and he went with the second group who made hijrah to Abyssinia because of the persecution. Another time, they tied his feet, and then they dragged him and they threw him again into the desert, into the ground which is baked and hot. And likewise they tried to strangle him as well. All of this to try to make him leave Islam. And when they were strangling him, they would do it in such a way that he would think he's just about to die. And all of this was to make him, to put him in a position whereby he would leave Islam. And likewise, once again, we see that Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiyallahu anhu, he would see this, he would walk past and see him being punished, and then when he got his chance, he would purchase the slave and then free him for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So likewise, Amir bin Fahira, and likewise Abu Fakiha Aflah, he bought both of them and he released them. Likewise, Khabbab bin al-Arat radiyallahu anhu. He was someone who, again, he was captured in Jahiliyyah and he was made a slave, and he was bought by a woman by the name of Anwar, and she was the wife of a person who was a blacksmith who works with iron, and things of that nature. And what she would do, of one of her, those under her control, they would take this iron, this piping hot iron, and they would put it on his back, in order to force him to abandon and disbelieve in Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And this only increased him in his iman, in his taslim and his iman. Despite the pain that he would feel, it increased him in his iman. And the mushriks would also punish him. Besides this woman, they would come and twist his neck, grab him and twist his neck like this, pull his hair, and sometimes they would also throw him onto burning hot coals. And all of this, likewise, they would put stones on his chest so that he couldn't stand. All of this to make him leave Islam. Likewise, we have Zanira, who was the slave girl of Rumiyyah. She became a Muslim, and she was punished, and she was made to become blind. And the mushriks, they blinded her in her eyes. And they said, see, our gods, Al-Lat and Al-Uzza, have made you blind. And she would say, no, by Allah, no, by Allah, they have not afflicted me. And this is from Allah. If Allah wills, He will remove it. And then, only a day or so afterwards, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He returned back her vision, returned back her sight to her. And the mushriks, they said, see, this is from the sihr. This is from the magic performed by Muhammad. And these are the kind of things that they would say to the people. They would punish them. And these are the kind of things that they would say. Likewise, there was Ubays. And she was a slave girl who became a Muslim. And they would likewise punish her. Her master would punish her. Her master was Al-Aswad bin Abd Yaghuth. Abd Yaghuth, meaning the servant of Yaghuth, who was an idol that they used to worship. And he was one of the most severest of enemies against the Messenger of Allah and the one who would mock him as well. This is what they would do. When they saw that the people under their control or power, a slave or a slave girl, were accepting the message of Muhammad, this is what they would do to them. Likewise, was a slave girl of Amr bin Mu'ammal. She became a Muslim. And Umar bin al-Khattab, radiyallahu anhu, this is when he used to be a non-Muslim, when he was a pagan, and he would punish her as well. He used to be upon shirk in that time. He would beat her until she, would start to lose consciousness, and then he would leave her alone, and then he would come back, and he would punish her in this way. And likewise, there are examples of others who became Muslims. For example, An-Nahdiyya and her daughter, and they used to be owned by a woman from Bani Abdiddar, and Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, he purchased a lot of these people who were being punished, who were being tortured and persecuted, and he freed them for the sake of Allah, just like he freed Bilal and Amir and Abu Fakiha that we looked at earlier on. And then his father, when his father saw Abu Bakr freeing all of these people, and these people were not the noble people with high position in the tribes. They were slaves. They were they were considered to be the lowest types of people. And so his father, Abu Quhafa, he said to him that you're just freeing slaves who are just like the weak people. That's why they're not saying anything to you. They're not doing anything to you. If you were to free someone who was, had some position or who had some worth, then they would have prevented you. And so Abu Bakr said, indeed, I only seek the face of Allah. And then it is here that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He revealed the verses in the Quran in which He says, فَأَنذَرْتُكُمْ نَارًا تَلَظَّى لَا يَصْلَاهَا إِلَّا الْأَشْقَى الَّذِي كَذَّبَ وَتَوَلَّى. These verses here, so I warn you from a fire that roasts and burns, which is very fiery and burns. None shall roast in it except the wretched the one who disbelieves and turns away. And this was in relation to one of those men, Umayyah bin Khalaf, the man that we mentioned at the beginning, the one who used to punish Bilal. And this ayah was revealed, these verses were revealed in relation to him. And then Allah says, وَسَيُجَنَّبُهَا الْأَتْقَى الَّذِي يُؤْتِي مَالَهُ يَتَزَكَّى. That we shall make the one who is pious, we shall turn him away from it, meaning the fire. The one who gives from his wealth to become purified. وَمَا لِأَحَدٍ عِنْدَهُ مِن نِعْمَةٍ تُجْزَى. And he doesn't have any favor, he doesn't owe anybody a favor. That when he frees and gives his wealth, it's not because anybody has a favor over him. Rather he gives it إِلَّا بِتِغَاءَ وَجْهِ رَبِّهِ الْأَعْلَى. He only gives it because he seeks the face of his Lord. The face of his Lord the Most High. وَلَسَوْفَ يَرْضَى. Soon will he be pleased. And this ayah is from the virtues of Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. Likewise, Ammar bin Yasir and his mother and his father, so there's Ammar and his father Yasir and his mother who is known as Sumayyah. They became Muslim. And the tribe of Bani Makhzoom, at the head of them was Abu Jahl. Abu Jahl. And they would also punish them. They would take them out to the desert on the baking hot ground. They would punish them. And the Messenger would see this. And he had no control to do anything. He would pass by them and he would say to them, Sabran, Sabran al Yasir. Patience, O family of Yasir. Maw'idukum al-Jannah. Your guarantee or your promise is paradise. And then he will make dua for them. Oh Allah, forgive the family of Yasir. So we'd make dua for them. So as for Yasir, the father of Ammar, he would be punished, and he died whilst being punished. And as for Ammar himself, the mother of Ammar, she is known as Sumayyah. And Abu Jahl, he's the one who killed Sumayyah by piercing her with a spear from the front. And she became the first martyr in Islam. The first martyr in Islam is the mother of Ammar bin Yasir. And her name is Sumayyah radiyallahu anha. And as for Ammar, then they would give all sorts of punishments to him. They would take him and make him wear the when you go to war and you wear you have the shield and you have the armor made of steel or metal or iron, and put him in the heat, and so he would feel the heat of all of that and leave him standing. And sometimes they would put, again, the favorite method they used to use is to put him on the ground and put a huge rock on his chest. And likewise they would pour water over him, hot water, until he would say with his tongue what he did not believe in his heart. He would agree to, he would say with his tongue that I follow your way. I disbelieve in Muhammad. And he would revile the Prophet ﷺ. But he would say this with the tongue without his heart being affected. And this is when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He revealed in the Quran the verse which occurs in Surah Al-Nahl, at the end of Surah Al-Nahl, من كفر بالله من بعد إيمانه إلا من أكره وقلبه مطمئن بالإيمان. That whoever disbelieves in Allah after his faith, so this one, there is punishment. And then Allah makes an exception. There's an exception. Unless and except for the one who is forced and compelled to speak with kufr, whilst his heart is firm in iman. But as for the one وَلَكِنْ مَنْ شَرَحَ بِالْكُفْرِ صَدْرًا فَعَلَيْهِمْ غَضَبٌ مِّنَ اللَّهِ وَلَهُمْ عَذَابٌ عَظِيمٌ. But as for the one who opens his chest to disbelief, upon them is the anger of Allah and for them is a tormenting punishment. Meaning, there are two types of people. The first one is the one who is punished and he's forced to say disbelief. So he says, for example, I disbelieve in Allah, I disbelieve in the Quran, I disbelieve in the messenger, I know that this message is wrong. And he says this with the mouth only, but his heart is firm in Iman. And so the scholars say that this ayah is a proof that a person can speak outwardly that which is disbelief when he's in danger of death. And so he can say, he can make these expressions. And then the scholars mention certain conditions as well. That the threat and the danger has to be immediate. Meaning that the threat of death is right now. Not, for example, someone comes and says to you, right, if you don't disbelieve in Muhammad and you don't disbelieve in Islam, we're going to take you and do this and do this and do this, do that, and they're not doing anything. Rather, the threat has to be immediate and taking place. And the scholars mention certain other conditions to do this. But the second part of the verse says that as for the one who opens his chest to disbelief, meaning the one who under pressure, he says disbelief and his heart is open to it as well. His heart, embraces that disbelief. This person is the one upon whom is Allah's anger, and for him will be a severe punishment. Likewise, they punished Mus'ab bin Umair. And Mus'ab bin Umair, radiyallahu anhu, he was a person who had, he used to live well, was well off, and when he entered into Islam, his mother wouldn't give him any food. No drink, no food. She would expel him from the house. And, so you can imagine that a lot of the Muslims who were turning to Islam, you can imagine the kind of things that were happening in the household. Now, here is your father, here is your mother. They are the closest of people to you. And they are behaving in this way. They are cutting off ties with you. They are preventing you from food and drink. They are expelling you from the home. How are you supposed to behave when you are supposed to honor them and respect them? You can imagine the state of mind and the persecution and the hardship that the Muslims had to go through in order to stick to Tawheed and Iman. Likewise, Suhaib bin Sinan al-Rumi, he was punished in a similar way until he would lose consciousness. He wouldn't know what he's saying. And Uthman bin Affan, radiyallahu anhu, his uncle would take him, and they used to make mats out of the palm leaves. And he would be taken and wrapped in a mat. And then his uncle would light a fire underneath so that, it would harm him. Likewise, Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiyallahu anhu and Talha bin Ubaidillah, they would be taken by one of the pagans called Nawfal bin Khuwaylid al-Adawi, and he would take the both of them and he would tie them together with a rope so they weren't able to pray. They weren't able to perform salah. And they didn't succumb to the persecution, and they released themselves, and they became known as the two friends, or the two companions, because the fact that they used to be tied together in a single rope. So Abu Jahl, so from all of this we understand and we can see the way in which the mushrikeen, after all previous attempts, has failed. From the beginning, the messenger is a magician, he is a madman, he is possessed, he's coming out with poetry, he's taught morning and evening the stories of old. This didn't work. Then they would send people to go to Syria to learn all of the stories about the nations and the tribes, to come back, and then to compete with the Messenger of Allah that what we are saying, the stories we are telling you, they are better than what Muhammad is telling you. and they would try to bring in audiences to listen to them. Then they would pay women who were singers to direct the people away from just listening to the Prophet ﷺ. Then they would sit on the roads when the people would come, and they would warn them against the Prophet ﷺ and say he's a madman. All of this didn't work. None of it worked. Then they tried to argue, as we mentioned, about the resurrection, about prophethood, about the Tawheed of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. All of the arguments were demolished and destroyed. Then they, under the leadership of the top leaders, Abu Jahl, Abu Lahab, the top leaders of the tribes, they decided to start persecuting the Muslims. And what they did, whenever someone became a Muslim from a tribe, if that person was a person who had wealth, he had trade, he had business, he was a person who had a position and some respect and honor, they would promise him that we are going to ruin you. Your trade will be ruined, and your position and your status will be ruined. This is how they would threaten that person. And if he was someone who is just a weak person, from the slaves, or someone who didn't have any position, they would actually beat him and persecute him and harm him physically, because that was very easy to do with the likes of these people. And so the point is that anyone who entered into Islam, they would never cease to oppress and harm, to bring harm to that person and to seek revenge against that person. And most of these transgressions were against the weak Muslims, the Muslims who were weak. And as for when one of the leaders, the kibar from the tribes, when they became Muslim, then because he had some respect, then they treated him in a careful way. And the only people who harmed those types of people were the senior from the tribes. So if a senior person from a tribe became a Muslim, then only the senior ones from the same tribe or other tribes would harm that person. Why? Because they had this notion of respect and so on and so forth, and no one would really be bold enough to attack them except the noble people from from each of the tribes. Now, so far, everything we've discussed is in relation to the people who are becoming Muslim. What about the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam? What about the Prophet himself? And so we know that the Prophet ﷺ, he had a lofty position, a very noble position. He was respected. And because of this respect that he had, because of his lineage and because of the nobility of his lineage, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, by way of this, much of the harm was prevented from him. And likewise, Abu Talib, his uncle, would protect him a great deal and prevent a lot of the harm from reaching him. And Abu Talib himself was a very noble leader. He was seen with a lot of respect. He was venerated by the people, by the Quraysh. And they would never ever do anything to basically humiliate him or to bring him down or to revile him. Because why? He was from the best of the tribe of Abd Manaf. So he had this respect amongst the Quraysh. And the Quraysh specifically and the whole of the Arabic tribes, they held him in a lot of respect. And because of this, the Prophet himself, all of this harm and punishment that you saw upon Bilal and Uthman bin Affan and all of the other Sahaba, this did not come to the Prophet ﷺ. It was to the weak Muslims and to the other Muslims. So the mushriks, therefore, they were not able to harm the Prophet ﷺ in this way. So they were forced to take a different measure, a different step. And so what they did is that initially they had to take peaceful steps. They tried to have some discussions and try to have some compromise and some concessions with Abu Talib, with his uncle. But they tried to do it in a type of to put pressure, try and put pressure on Abu Talib. They couldn't be aggressive, but they tried to put pressure upon Abu Talib. So the first thing that they did is that they came, a group of men, they came to Abu Talib, and these men were from the nobles of Quraysh, the top people of the tribe. They came to Abu Talib and they said that your nephew, the son of your brother, they said that he has sabba alihatana, he's reviled our gods, wa'aba dinana, he has criticized our religion, wa saffaha ahlamana, he's considered us to be stupid, he's deemed us to be stupid, wa dallala aba'ana, he's considered our forefathers to be misguided. He's saying our forefathers are misguided. So either you stop him from this, or that you leave us to deal with him. Leave us to deal with him. And, and then this is what they said. Now, we can stop at this point and take a lesson from the seerah, because there's a lesson from the seerah to be taken here. And this lesson is mentioned by Shaykh al-Islam Muhammad bin Abdul Wahhab Rahmah ta'ala in his book Sittat Mawadi' min as-Seerah. He has a treatise called six places in the seerah, 6 incidents in the seerah. And he mentions within them, in the second place, the second of the 6, and he says in this part in the seerah, he says أنه the Prophet ﷺ, أنه صلى الله عليه وسلم لما قام, when he stood and began to warn them from shirk, ويأمرهم بضده وهو التوحيد, and when he began to command them with its opposite, which is tawheed, لم يكرهوا ذلك واستحسنوه وحدثوا أنفسهم بالدخول فيه. And listen to this amazing benefit. He says that when the Messenger of Allah, when he came to the Quraysh, and he said to them, and he began to tell them, come into Tawheed, worship Allah alone, don't fall into shirk. All of this is general. All of this is general speech. Do not commit shirk, worship Allah alone. At this point, the mushriks would say, yes, we agree with you. We are not committing shirk, and we are worshipping Allah alone. Why? Because what they are doing, they don't consider it to be shirk. Seeking shafa'ah, seeking nearness to Allah through the dead and the idols. To them, this is not shirk. This is just from the asbab, from the ways. And when he says to them, worship Allah alone, they say, yes, we do worship Allah alone. So this is da'wah which is general. Mujmal, this is general. To this point, the mushriks did not have any problem. And as Shaykh al-Islam says here, that they considered this to be something good. وَاسْتَحْسِنُوهُ, they thought that this is a good dawah, this is a good religion. We will worship Allah alone, we won't commit shirk. And he says, وَحَدَّثُوا أَنفُسَهُمْ بِالدُّخُولِ فِيهِ, they even thought to themselves, they thought, yes, we will accept Islam. Why not accept Islam? Then he says, إِلَىٰ أَنْ صَرَّحَ لَهُمْ بِصَبِّ دِينِهِمْ وَتَجْهِيلِ عُلَمَائِهِمْ, until the messenger came out and he began to revile their religion, meaning that he began to revile what they were doing of worshipping other than Allah, and doing that in a detailed sense. And likewise, وَتَجْهِيلِ عُلَمَائِهِمْ, and rendering their scholars to be ignorant. That these people you are following, they don't have any knowledge. They're not guiding you upon knowledge. And he says, فَحِينَئِذٍ شَمَّرُوا لَهُ وَلِأَصْحَابِهِ عَنْ سَاقِ الْعَدَاوَةِ. Here it was. This was when they rolled up their sleeves and they said, right, now we have to do something about you. Now we have enmity towards you. Because why now? This is no longer a general da'wah, speaking in general terms. Now he's pointed out the batil, the falsehood, specifically, and now he's exposed which we're upon, and he's saying that we are committing shirk, and our forefathers are misguided, and our deen is a corrupt deen. Then this is when they began to, and he says, وَقَالُوا صَفَّهَ أَحْلَامَنَا وَأَعَابَ دِينَنَا وَشَتَمَ آلِهَتَنَا. This is when they began to say, just like here these people, the nobles of Quraysh, they came to Abu Talib, and that's what they began to say. He says, our forefathers are ignorant. He says, our deen is corrupt. He says that we are stupid for worshipping these idols. This is when they came, and they came to Abu Talib. Now what is the lesson from this? The lesson from this, there are many lessons that we can take, that the ulama, the scholars mention about this. And so one of the most important lessons that we can take from this is that our methodology, our way in calling to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is one of tafsil. It is one of detail. We do not speak in general vague terms. We clarify everything. We clarify the truth in detail, and we clarify the falsehood in detail. So for example, our dawah is not to go out and say, follow the sunnah. We don't go to the people who are upon bid'ah and we say, follow the sunnah, and here are the virtues of following the sunnah, and here are the punishments for not following the sunnah. All of this is vague in general. This is vague in general. Nobody is going to disagree with you. You go to a tablighi and you say, you mention the hadith of al-Irbad bin Sariya. Whoever amongst you lives for long will see controversies. فَعَلَيْكُمْ بِسُنَّتِي. Upon you is my sunnah. And you read the obligation of sticking to the sunnah. Tablighi is going to say to you, I agree with you. I agree with you. And like as you mentioned the virtues of Tawheed, no one's going to disagree with you. And like as you mention, you go to an Ash'ari and you say Allah subhanahu, you mention Ar-Rahmanu al-Arshi istawa. He'll say, I agree with you. I'm not going to disagree with you. All of this is da'wah which is mujmal and general. But it is only when you speak about the misguidance, when you go out for 40 days, this is bid'ah, dalala. It opposes the sunnah. The messenger never did it. The companions never did. The messenger sent companions, scholars to other people. He didn't send ignorant people who do not know what is tawheed. Only then when you start speaking specifics and in detail, and you mention the truth, then you will see who really wants guidance and who chooses misguidance. Likewise, when you say to the Ash'ari, you say Ar-Rahmanu al-Arshi istawa, this means ala wa irtafa'a wa sa'uda. This means Allah rose over, ascended above the throne. It does not mean istawla. It does not mean that he conquered the throne. This is batil. This is even more evil than what you try to flee away from. Because you're trying to claim that you are following Tawheed, and you're trying to say Allah can't be above the throne, because this is shirk and kufr. And then you say it means istawla, it means Allah conquered the throne. And as we see in some of the narrations that one of the Mu'tazila, he came to one of the specialists in the language, I believe it was Ibn al-A'rabi, I believe, I can't remember the name. And so he tried to say to him, oh, in the Quran this word istawa, it means istawla. They try to corrupt the language and put meanings into the language which are not there. And so this scholar of the language, he said to him, be silent. This is not from the language. The Arabs, they use this word istawla when there are two parties who are fighting each other. Then when one dominates the other one, then they say istawla. So this would mean, according to them, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He was not conquering the throne. There was something from His creation He hadn't conquered. And this is kufr. This is kufr. So they tried to flee from something and fell into something even worse. So the point being that when we come and we invite people to Islam, we don't speak in general terms. Likewise, if you say to an Ash'ari, we believe Allah is above the throne, they will say, I agree with you. Why? Because what he means in his mind, he means Allah is above the throne, meaning He is better than the throne. Like you say, the gold coin is above the silver coin, meaning the gold coin is better in status, better in value. That's what they mean. And that's why some of the Ash'aris, they will say to you, and this is what they say to us, we believe Allah is above the throne in a way that you people can't even imagine. And what they mean is we believe Allah is higher than the throne, above the throne in rank and status. So when we call to these people, we don't speak in... It's not enough to say Al-Quran, Kalamullah. The Quran is the speech of Allah. Everybody's going to agree with you. The Mu'tazili will say, yes, I agree with you, the Quran is the speech of Allah. But the speech of Allah is something created that people, And the Ash'ari will say, I believe the Quran is the speech of Allah. All of this is not enough. It's not sufficient. And so when you look at the way that the Salaf, how they behaved with the people of Bid'ah in their time, they behaved in the same way that the Messenger Muhammad ﷺ behaved with the kuffar of Quraysh. He called them specifically, with making their falsehood to be clear and making the truth to be clear. So that the path is so apparent that you know that guidance is over there and misguidance is over here. This is how clear it is. And likewise, this is the da'wah of Ahlul Sunnati wal Jama'ah. In every time, in every place, this is how they call the people. They don't use vague general words. Follow the Sunnah and don't follow Bid'ah. Nobody's going to agree with you. Worship Allah alone and don't worship others besides Allah. Nobody's going to agree. No one's going to disagree with you. Everyone's going to agree with you. The Sufi, the Barelwi, everyone's going to agree with you. But it is not until you mention specifics in your da'wah that you will then, you will see really whether the people want the truth or not. So these people, they came, the nobles of Quraysh, they came to Abu Talib and they said to him what they said, that you better tell your nephew to be silent and to stop this call that he's making. Look at what he's saying to us. He's reviling us. He's abusing us. He's attacking our religion. He's reviling our forefathers. You've got to put a stop to this. So Abu Talib, he managed to calm them down. He mentioned some nice, gentle, soft words. And he made them to basically just calm down a little. And they went back, they turned away, and the Prophet ﷺ, he continued making his da'wah. So this is Abu Talib, who was helping and protecting his nephew. Why? Not because of Islam, but because he had such a powerful, strong connection and love for his nephew. This is something which is dunyawi. For a dunyawi reason, he was protecting his nephew. And remember, we mentioned in the earlier lessons that Abu Talib became very attached to his nephew Muhammad ﷺ and treated him like his own son. And this is how the Arabs were. They, would treat this as a matter of honor. So now the Quraysh have gone back and they see that this man Muhammad ﷺ is continuing calling the people. Why? Because he's ordered by Allah to convey the message. So they weren't able to have patience for long. They saw him and they came once more to Abu Talib. And this time they said to Abu Talib, you are a man of age, you are older than we are, you have nobility, you have position, you have, we've already come to you once, we've already asked you to stop this nephew of yours, but he hasn't stopped. And by Allah, we will not have patience anymore. And we will not take it if our forefathers are reviled and we are considered to be deemed to be stupid, and for our gods to be reviled. So either you put an end to this, or one person has to compromise, or otherwise one of the two parties is going to be destroyed. So now they've gave him an ultimatum. Either you do something, or one of the two parties, something is going to happen. So this now became heavy upon Abu Talib. Now, because now they mean business. They mean what they say. So this was a threat, and it was a warning. Now remember, before they wouldn't do this to Abu Talib, because Abu Talib is a man of a very high position amongst the Quraysh. And so they tried to use diplomacy and respect and so on and so forth. It didn't work. Now they've come and now they've actually made a threat. Now they made a threat. And a challenge. And so he invited the Messenger of Allah, and he mentioned to him what the Quraysh said. And Abu Talib said words to the Messenger of Allah, and he said to him, words, and the Messenger could see that he has become weak, that he's affected by what the Quraysh said to him. And so this is when the Messenger of Allah, he said to him, O uncle, by Allah, that if they were to put the sun in my right hand and the moon in my left hand, this would not cause me to abandon this affair up until Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes this affair to be uppermost, meaning until Islam becomes uppermost, or until I perish calling to it. I would never abandon it. So then Abu Talib, he started thinking and reflecting, and he began to cry and whatever else, and then eventually he became, it affected him, and he became soft again, and then he developed trust again in his nephew. And so he said, okay, be away from me. By Allah, he said, I will not allow you to be harmed. And so he gave him reassurance. After the Messenger, he told him that he was determined and firm not to let go. So now, as you can imagine, the Quraysh saw that despite their threat and despite their challenge and warning to Abu Talib, the Prophet is still out there. He's calling the people, he's continuing. Abu Talib is standing, helping him still, aiding his nephew. And this means that Abu Talib is not prepared to leave his nephew. Under no circumstances is he going to leave his nephew. That he is even prepared to abandon them and to show enmity towards them and to face all of that just to protect his nephew. Now they've recognized, and now they realize that Abu Talib is not going to let go very easily. So they began to think, and they thought, they came with a new idea, and they came to Abu Talib, a group of them, and they said to him, they brought this person. This person was called Ammar bin al-Walid, and he was a youth from the best of the youth of Quraysh. The best of the youth, the most beautiful of the youth, the most handsome of the youth. And they said to him, "O Abu Talib, why don't you give us over Muhammad, and we will give you the best of our youths. Take him and make him a son of yours. He will be your son, and give us Muhammad." And this one who was opposed our religion, who was attacked our forefathers, give him to us, and you take this individual, and we will kill him. So Abu Talib said, by Allah, how evil is this that you are, I'm going to give you, you're going to give me your son, so I have to feed him and look after him, and I'm going to give you my nephew and you're going to kill him. What is this? He said, by Allah, this is never going to happen. So now this bribe didn't work. Now this is a bribe, didn't work. And remember, they cannot do to the Prophet ﷺ what they were doing to the weak Muslims. Why? Because Muslim, he has status, position, noble lineage. He has Abu Talib, the best of the Quraysh, protecting him, looking after him. They can't do these types of things to the Prophet ﷺ. So now, obviously, they're getting frustrated, and it comes to the point now, it comes to the stage and it comes to the point now where they are going to start transgressing against the Messenger of Allah ﷺ. All the threats, all the challenges, all of the, when they went to Abu Talib, it didn't have any effect at all. And so this is where they started now to transgress against the Prophet ﷺ, and they increased in punishing the other Muslims. They raised it much, much more. So, now obviously the people who would harm the Prophet ﷺ wasn't just any person from the Quraysh, from the Kuffar. It was the highest people, the ones who had the same nobility, the same position, because it wasn't a custom that someone lowly from the tribe would put himself forward and to start attacking someone high in the tribe. This was something between the nobles. So the nobles, people like Abu Lahab and many of the others, they would come and they would attack the Prophet ﷺ. So from those people, and these were people who were neighbors, who would live near the Prophet ﷺ, people like Abu Lahab, al-Hakam bin Abi al-As bin Umayyah, Uqba bin Abi Mu'ayt, Adi bin Hamra al-Thaqafi, and a number of others. All these were his neighbors. And so one of them would come, he'd take the insides of a goat, the entrails, the intestines, and take it and put it on the neck of the Prophet ﷺ whilst he was in sujood praying, by the Kaaba, and put it, so if you can imagine the intestines, all the things, and just drop them onto the neck of the Prophet ﷺ. This is what they used to do. And they would make mockery of him. And likewise, Umayyah bin Khalaf, whenever he would see the Prophet ﷺ, he would mock him and revile him, and make mockery and fun. And likewise, he had a brother called Ubay bin Khalaf. Ubay bin Khalaf. He too, he would, he would do likewise. He would take bones of an animal that were ground into powder. He would go to the Prophet ﷺ and he would blow it like this upon him, and in the face of the Prophet ﷺ. This is what they used to do. And one time, one of the Quraysh, they sat and they just listened to the Prophet ﷺ. Let's listen to him. And Uqba bin Abi Mu'ayt is the one who did this. And this reached Ubay bin Khalaf. He heard that one of them actually sat and listened. So he ordered him and said, you better go now and spit in the face of the Prophet ﷺ. Go and spit in the face of Muhammad. This is what he said. So he went and he spat in the face of the Messenger of Allah ﷺ. And this is the hatred and what their hearts were filled with. Abu Lahab, likewise, he would, he actually had a number of daughters that were married. His sons, 2 sons were married, Utbah and Utaybah. And they were married to 2 daughters of the Prophet ﷺ, Ruqayya and Kulthum. And so he ordered his sons to divorce the 2 daughters. And likewise, their mother ordered them to divorce the 2 daughters. And his wife was known as Jamil, the wife of Abu Lahab, and she was a severe enemy to the Prophet ﷺ. And she used to bring branches with thorns and spikes and put them into a bundle and then throw them in the path that the Messenger ﷺ would take. and so that he would be harmed. And then the ayah was revealed in Surah Al-Lahab, in which she was mentioned, Tabbat yada abi lahabin wa tab. This ayah was revealed, and she was mentioned in the surah as the Hammalat al-Hatab, the one who carries the firewood. And when she heard this, obviously it made her become very angry. So she came one day with pebbles. She picked loads of pebbles to throw at the Prophet ﷺ. And she came to the Kaaba, and Abu Bakr was sitting with the Messenger of Allah ﷺ. And she came and she said to Abu Bakr, "Where is your companion?" Allah blinded her from seeing the Prophet ﷺ, sat right next to Abu Bakr. And so she said, "Where is your companion? If I see him, I'm going to throw him with these pebbles." She didn't see him. She only saw Abu Bakr. So, and then she mentioned some poetry. She said, "Mudhammaman asayna, mudhammaman asayna." The one who is blameworthy, we've disobeyed him. Mudhammamun is the name they used to give to Muhammad. He was Muhammad, they said Mudhammam. Muhammad means the praiseworthy. Mudhammam means the blameworthy, the one who's rebuked and criticized and whatever. So they would say in poetry, Mudhammaman asayna. The one who is blameworthy, we've disobeyed him. Wa amruhu abayna. His command, we have rejected it. وَدِينَهُ عَلَيْنَا. And his religion, we have abandoned it. She said this out of boasting. And then she went. So Abu Bakr said to the Messenger, didn't she see you? He said, no, she didn't see me because Allah took away her vision. And so here you can see that these are the kind of things that they used to do, mock the Prophet ﷺ and use these names for him. Likewise, Abu Jahl. We see that Abu Jahl, he would come and he would try to attack the Prophet ﷺ. One time he came and the Prophet ﷺ, he grabbed him. One he was praying and he tried to come to the Prophet ﷺ, and the Prophet ﷺ grabbed hold of him and shook him. And he said to him, "Awla laka fa'awla, thumma awla laka fa'awla." The Messenger said this to Abu Lahab. And Abu Lahab said, Are you threatening me? Are you threatening me, O Muhammad? And, so these kind of altercations were taking place. And one time, Abu Lahab, he tried to come and attack the Prophet ﷺ. He said, I'm going to come by Al-Lat and by Al-Uzza. If I see Muhammad, I'm going to put my foot on his neck and trample on his face. And so he came, he saw the Prophet ﷺ praying. And then all of a sudden, he turned and he ran. And then when he was asked, what happened to you? He said, indeed, between me and him, the Prophet, there was a trench of fire. And I saw, he saw angels with wings. And the Messenger said that if he had come any closer to me, those angels would have plucked him limb by limb. They would have plucked out his limbs and spit him limb by limb. They would have torn him to pieces. And so likewise we see all these types of things are taking place. One time Uqba bin Abi Mu'ayt, he came, he saw the Prophet ﷺ was praying, and Abu Jahl and them said to him, why don't you take the fetus of a camel, the dead baby of a camel which has been delivered, go and bring it and throw it on him, put it on his back while he's praying. So this man, he went and he brought this fetus, dead fetus, and put it on the back of the Prophet ﷺ. And then his daughter Fatima came out and she removed it off her father. And the Prophet ﷺ, he said, Allahumma alayka bi Quraysh. He made dua against them. Oh Allah, upon you is the Quraysh. And then he began, Allahumma alayka bi fulan, wa fulan, wa fulan. He started mentioning by name. And when they heard the dua being made against them, they became scared. Why? Because the haram, they used to respect the haram because it was a place where they believed that the dua is answered. And when they heard the messenger saying, Oh Allah, Allahumma alayka bi fulan, wa fulan, wa fulan, he mentioned all by name, they got very scared. And these people who were behind all of this, there were 5 of them, the 5 main instigators. Al-Walid bin al-Mughira, al-Makhzumi, al-Aswad, bin Abd Yaghuth al-Zuhri, and other names as well, Abu Zum'ah, al-Aswad bin Abd al-Muttalib al-Asadi, al-Harith ibn Qais al-Khuza'i, al-As bin Wa'il, and so on and so forth. Prophet ﷺ, he mentioned them all by name. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he revealed the verse in the Quran, Inna kafaynaka al-mustahzi'in. Meaning that we have sufficed you, we are protecting you and sufficing you from those who mock. We will suffice you. And then every single one of them, they died. They subsequently died in a way that was an admonition. One of them, Al-Walid, he died by a wound. He had a laceration, a wound, and it became poisonous, and then he slowly died. And he died an agonizing, painful death. And Al-Aswad bin Abd Yaghuth, likewise, he suffered from wounds, and it is said that he died from poison, or some of them say that he ruptured his stomach. So he died in a certain way. Al-Aswad bin Abd al-Muttalib, likewise, he became blind, and he eventually died. Al-Harith bin Qais, similarly, he died by way of like an ailment of the stomach. And Al-As bin Wa'il, he stepped upon a thorn that was poisonous, and eventually the poison went to his head up until he died. All of these are different ways in which these people they perished. All of them perished in this way. So the point being here now from all of this, and we're going to come to a conclusion in our talk now, is that this is only a small sample of all of the trials and tribulations, the persecution, the torment, the torture that the Muslims went through, and how eventually they began to attack the Messenger himself in a way that they weren't doing previously. Because all the steps and measures they tried, they didn't work. So now they try to put harm in his way, indirect methods. Throw thorns on the path. Put entrails on his body when he's praying. All of this, they try to make harm reach through in an indirect way. So this now leads us to two steps that the Prophet now decided that obviously this harm is something that is harming the Muslims, and we have to take a number of steps. So two steps were taken. The first step is the step whereby a house of one of the Muslims, he was called Al-Arqam. Al-Arqam bin Abil Arqam al-Makhzumi, he had a house by As-Safa, where we do Safa and Marwa, the Sa'i. He had a house by Safa, which is away from the main places, the main houses where the Quraysh and everybody else was living. So they decided that the people who are Muslims, they are going to meet together in this place. We're not going to meet together openly like we used to do before. We do it in a secretive way and meet together in this place. So this became known as Darul Arqam. Darul Arqam. And so in this place, the Messenger would go to them, teach them, recite the book of Allah, purify them, inform them, teach them, give them the book, give them the wisdom. And by doing it in this way, a lot of the companions, they avoided a lot of the harms and tribulations that the Muslims in general were facing. As for the Prophet himself, he would obviously do this openly. Why? Because he is commanded to go and call openly to the people. But as for the other Muslims, then they would go to Darul Arqam and remain there. And this protected all of the oppression, the mockery, the oppression from them. As for the Messenger, he was told to go out openly. Why? So that no one can say afterwards, as Allah says in the Quran, مَا جَاءَنَا مِن بَشِيرٍ وَلَا نَذِيرٍ. So no one can say, no messenger came to us and no warner came to us. So this was the first step, the first measure. The second measure is that the Prophet ﷺ told some of the Muslims to go and make hijrah, to leave the place and to go to Abyssinia, Habasha. And this was after he verified that the king An-Najashi was a just king and he would not oppress anybody. So then in Rajab of the fifth year of the prophethood, they were sent, the first group of Muslims, there were 16 Muslims, 12 men and 4 women. At the head of them was Uthman bin Affan al-Amawi radiyallahu anhu. Likewise his wife Ruqayya, the daughter of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So they were the first, Uthman and his wife were the first household to make hijrah after Ibrahim alayhi salam. That was the first hijrah after Ibrahim alayhi salam. And likewise after Lut alayhi salam, he was told to leave his people as well. So these Sahaba, they went secretly in the night. They made their way to the south of Jeddah, to the sea, and they managed to find 2 trading ships, and they got on those ships. And now the mushrikun, they heard about this, and they pursued them. They were very angry. How can these people escape and go? So they chased them, became very angry. They followed them in their tracks, and they wanted to grab them and bring them back. And unfortunately for them, they were too late. And alhamdulillah for the Muslimin, they managed to get onto the ships and the boats and travel and get to the other side. And so this was the second step that was taken in order to protect the Muslimin from the harms of the Quraysh. So this brings us to an end of today's lesson. And inshallah ta'ala we'll continue after this and look at some of the other main incidents. The incidents which now go to another level, which is trying to assassinate and kill the Prophet ﷺ himself. And many attempts were made, and the kuffar of Quraysh, they increased the methods that they were going to use. So with that we conclude. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in.